Here at Mosaic, we want to be really helpful to you. And today we want to talk to you about managing your finances. With the virus, now more than ever, it's important that we manage our money properly. And Ian and I are going to chat to you today about how we manage our money and hope that you can learn something from that. We're both from a finance background, right, Ian?
That's correct.
I'm a chartered accountant and I have 20 years experience in the tax world, which is exciting to me, not so great at dinner parties. How about you, Ian? You're also a finance background.
Yeah, I'm also a chartered accountant, was qualified in Australia. I did start out in tax, but I didn't really quite enjoy it too much. I actually moved on into restructuring, insolvency, or bankruptcy, as different people call it different things across the world, which is actually a great industry to be in now. But I've since moved on. I've moved into being in finance team and doing analytics, which has been really, really interesting. It's how people can use data to make better financial decisions.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And in the past, you and I have talked about our personal finances, as you do. And I know that you have quite a system and principles that you apply. It's very impressive for a guy your age. So can you tell us about that? Sure,
yeah. I'm a big believer in just having sort of some basic principles to live by. And for me, one of the things that I've learned is I've sort of helped a few people with a little bit of finance stuff. But what I found is people generally overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year, and they actually underestimate what they can achieve in 6 years. And what I mean by that is basically having a plan and sticking to it and not realizing there's no sort of get rich quick sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, one of the things that I've learned is there's a person in Australia called Scott Pape. He's called the Barefoot Investor. Feel free to Google him.
What's his name, sorry?
Scott Pape.
Pape,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's basically got 9 steps, and he calls it his serviette strategy. And the reason why he calls it the serviette strategy is he basically wanted to be able to explain it very simply for both him and his wife to be able to get together and understand principles. And so I'm going to go through 3 of those 9 steps today.
Okay. And serviette, remind me, because he could write it on a...
Yes, literally on the back of a serviette, just keeping it simple and keeping it easy. Because that's really what the finances should be. It shouldn't be too complex.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So the first step he talks about is basically you got to schedule a monthly finance date night.
Okay.
And the reason why he does that is he basically talks about first intention. A lot of what you do with finances is really about actually having a plan. Many people that I've spoken to a lot of times find finances quite confronting. They're not like me. They don't have spreadsheets set up and things to look at on a regular basis. And so actually getting your mind in the process and the thinking of wanting to manage your money is a really conscious and important first step. The next thing you go is you sort of track your progress. And I'll talk about that in step 2, which is the buckets. But that's what you're going to talk about in these date nights. And that's really, really important to have these discussions, to have the information to talk about these things.
And by date night, I suppose you mean you're going to sit down with your wife and discuss?
Yep.
What about if, like me, you're single?
Yeah. That's at point 3. So accountability. So accountability can come from a partner, which is your wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, but it can also come from a close friend or maybe a family member. And whilst that may seem confronting to do, it's actually a really important step in mentally shifting how you're beginning to think with your finances.
Okay.
Yeah. So step 2 is actually the financial buckets. And so Scott Pape, the Barefoot Investor, he comes up with these really, really good concepts. And he's basically got 100% of your income. You split it basically into 3 buckets.
Okay.
You've got the blow bucket, the mojo bucket, and the grow bucket.
Blow, mojo,
Yep.
grow.
Blow, mojo, and grow.
Okay.
Blow because basically that's going to be all your day-to-day spending, and that's always leaking. You've got your mortgage, you've got your rent, you've got your car payments, you've got your groceries, utilities, lots of things. And this blow bucket is actually 70% of your income.
Okay.
And that 70% is actually going to be split 60-10. And the reason what that 10 is for splurging, because we are humans, and whilst I don't buy a lot of new clothes, I know, for example, in my relationship with my wife, it's important to her.
Yeah.
So you got to have a little bit of space for that, because you still need to live life a little bit.
Yeah.
And the next bucket is actually the mojo bucket. And so this is actually going to be about 20% of your income.
Okay.
And the reason for this is you really want to build up between 3 to 6 months of your daily expenses in cash. And for a lot of people, that may be a bit confronting because it seems like a lot to build up, but it's something you can do over time. And once you sort of begin to track your expenses, you'll get a good sense of that. And if you think of the 60%, it's a good benchmark. Some people may say, well, maybe I should be investing that. It's not good to have in cash. Maybe I'll lose money on inflation. But what it is if anything, this time has shown us having that safety net of cash available so that you can cover expenses, cover unforeseen sort of things that come up is really, really important.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last bucket is the grow bucket. And that's really to grow your wealth. And so that's 10% of your income. So you've got 70 in the blow, 20 on the mojo, and 10% on the grow. The grow could be basically investments in shares, property, whatever it may be. But it's basically to help you grow your long-term wealth.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So the last step that I want to talk about is actually dominoing your debts.
Okay.
And for a lot of people, especially during times like this, it may be quite confronting to deal with your debts. But one of the most important steps you do when you go through this whole process is to actually sit down and write down all the debts that you have. It could be your bank debts in terms of your mortgage, credit cards, personal loans, borrowing from friends and family. Once you have that all on a piece of paper, you know what your current position is.
Yes.
Then the next step is really to negotiate. And it's when you think of your credit card debts or your car loans and stuff, or any of the sort of debts that you have, you can sort of, there are people that help you sort of bring that together, and you can renegotiate that and get a better rate.
Okay.
And the most important thing is to actually pay down the highest interest debt first.
Yes.
Because especially with credit card, it compounds. And so each month they'll charge you interest, and on top of that, they'll add that to your balance, and then they'll charge you on top of that again. So you end up paying a lot more. So it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
So that's the elimination phase that you want to get to. Pay off the highest interest debt, and then over time you'll just whittle it down.
Okay.
Yeah. So what about you? So I know I've spoken through a lot of my steps.
Okay.
So tell me about some of your steps.
Ian, I'm so impressed with that, honestly, because like I said, I think for someone at your age, to be this organised with finances is incredible. And I wish I'd been that organised in my 20s. But I am where I am. And my approach to finance is this. It's very simple. I also set a budget, same as you. I have a monthly budget. I have a long-term budget, which will take me all the way to retirement and beyond. The monthly budget, I do fluctuate it depending on my monthly review of how it's gone. So I adapt it. And I think the second point that I want to make is that what's really important, it's great to set a budget, but you need to track what you're spending. And so I track my spending using an app, spending tracker. They're readily available. And every time I buy something, I enter it into the tracker so that I know I've captured everything. And I'm keeping a view of where I'm going and how am I doing in the month. Now more than ever, I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not used to budgeting, I think that's a really easy start, is to just start tracking your spend. You probably don't realise what you're spending money on.
Yeah, I know that's something I've definitely picked up in my life, because I've got all the tracking going on. As soon as the COVID-19 happened, I was able to quickly reassess all the things. I heard you did the same as well.
Yeah, sure. And I want to come on to that, really. And when I set my budget, the principle I apply, if you've seen Andy Stanley's sermon on this, you'll know what I'm talking about, is give, save, live on the rest. So the first thing that I do when I budget is have my giving budget, and it's a percentage of my income. So even if my income reduces, like if I take a salary cut, for example, I'm still going to give, it's just perhaps the amount will change. So that's my priority. Saving's my second priority, and then living on the rest. Now, you mentioned about how have I adapted? Well, I'm sure like a lot of people, I've had to adapt my finances to the current situation, and I know that some of you will have taken salary cuts. Some may have even lost your job, and there are things that you can do if that's you. The first thing that I did was looked at all of my expenses and thought, what's the biggest ticket item that I'm spending on? And it was my rent. And so what I did, which was a big step, was I moved house. So I moved to a cheaper area, I got a smaller apartment, I cut my rent in half, which at this time I'm really grateful for. Now I know that's not going to be possible for everyone, but I do think that landlords are open to rent negotiations, and I think don't be afraid to have that conversation. You can really save money that way. But going further, I think look at everything that you're spending on and just cut back anything that's not essential. So I'm not having manicures, I'm making other cutbacks, but just as an example, there's simple ways that you can cut out spend that's just really not necessary. Just focus on the basics. The other tip that I would give, I've been following this Facebook group, Durham Stretchers. I don't know if you've heard of it. I know that some other people in our church use it. And you can see there like all the different bargains that can be found in Dubai. And I would just encourage you to just shop around. Don't just go to your local supermarket. And then lastly, I've tried to be more creative. So I've looked at what do I have? If I feel I want to buy something, I've probably got something that's appropriate already. So reuse your possessions. Don't always think that you need something new. And then the last tip that I could give is with all this time that's on our hands, try to learn a new skill and learn something that you might pay someone else to do it yourself. So I can't give a great example, but I'm trying to do some little DIY around my house,
nice.
or I would normally get a guy to come and do that for me. So that's my kind of how I've adapted my finances, given the kind of current crisis that we're facing and we're sure to face for a long time.
Thank you so much.
I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. You know, I really hope that something that we've shared today is going to resonate with you. There's some principles here that you can take away. There's some learnings, hopefully. And if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to Sarah and me, and me, or just reach us at Mosaic. You know, we're here to help, and if there's anything we can do to sort of help people through this time, we'd really be happy to.
Yeah.
So that's all from us today.
Thank you.